All right, Jake. What up?
What's up, man?
All right, Jake Elkins. He's a father. He's a coach, lover of all things dry erase. He's thick from the top of his head to the soles of his feet, and he's someone that you really should never let grab your neck. Jake Elkins, thanks for taking the time.
Man, I'm excited, dude. Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Yeah, we have these talks off air all the time, so we've been long overdue to do this, and hopefully get to do it plenty. I'm really excited about it. It fires me up, lights my hair on fire anytime we get together. So hopefully other people enjoy it as much as we do. If not, it'll be for our benefit and no one else's.
Yeah. I mean, the deal is like, man, our conversations are so good, and this podcast is new for me, and so I'm just trying to figure out what it is. I just feel like I have questions, and so we're just going to explore, try to find some answers. But first page of I got a couple pages of questions.
Let's do it.
I don't know if we can get through them all, but really the meat of these questions are towards the end. So maybe we'll try to cruise through the first portion and we'll see how it goes. But first question is, name a talent that not many people know you have.
Ooh, it's not singing. Everybody knows that I don't have that one, so it's not that one. Oh, man, a talent that not many people know. Dude, my talents are pretty limited. I'm going to be honest. They kind of exist on a mat. I am good at, how do I say this? So, like, I can build, like, outdoor landscaping stuff, which is not just the labor part, but, like, I wanted to, like, I spent a lot of time building retaining walls and that kind of stuff. So, like, I kind of know more about that. Running heavy equipment and stuff, I can do that, and I'm like, kind of good at it. And
yeah, I totally wouldn't have got that.
So maybe that's
what I'm asking you.
Heavy equipment. Yeah,
this
like
is something that I've never asked you. So this
Bobcat, tractor, backhoe, you name it. Like, yeah, and have the most fun as like any little kid. So yeah,
it's awesome. It's good. A lot of good thinking on the tractor. Like it's
fantastic. 100%.
Yeah, so good. What was your earliest memory?
On Mulberry Street. I remember being on Mulberry Street in Trussville as a little kid, and honestly seeing my mom's face. I just remember seeing her face sitting in a rocking chair. I don't even know how old I was, but I can see it plain as day.
What's your mom's name?
Sherry Elkins.
She's gonna be really happy that you see dude. She's gonna melt. That's good. I love it. What was 9-year-old Jake like?
Oh, man, 9-year-old. I was playing baseball full time. I think that was maybe right before I played my first season of football. So I was playing baseball year-round at the time. Loved it. Was going to grow up and be Chipper Jones. Had already decided that was going to happen. Didn't. Spoiler alert.
Right.
But, yeah, I'd already pretty well decided. Running outside, playing, wanted to be a cowboy, and somehow I couldn't figure out how being a cowboy and being a baseball player meshed, but I was pretty sure that I was going to do that somehow.
Yeah.
It's either going to ride bulls or play baseball, and one of the two.
Yeah, so you were, pretty much play was a central part. Like most 9-year-olds, but
100%, yeah. Cowboys and Indians. I was probably watching too much Young Guns, which I don't know that was really age appropriate, but me and my dad had watched that enough times that I knew every word. So,
oh man,
yeah, Billy the Kid all the way.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So where did you grow up, and what was it like in the Elkins household?
We grew up in Trussville. My parents are from Gadsden, Alabama. I grew up in Trussville, though. Two younger brothers were all 3 years apart, and it was a rambunctious house of boys. Never had a coffee table in our life. We were wrestling long before we ever found a wrestling mat. Wrestling was a thing that we got in trouble for. It was kind of cool when I found out we could go and do it in a structured environment and get celebrated instead of, whippings.
Oh my gosh, and break lamps and yeah, same. Obviously, I know you played multiple sports as a kid. At what point did you become a full-time knuckle dragger?
So, I was a baseball, football, and basketball player actually as a kid, and got into wrestling because I missed basketball sign-ups. It was a different time, so we were in the state championship for football, and I was playing and missed basketball signups, and you couldn't be a ringer and come in like the last kid in the league and be a first round pick.
Right.
It's a problem. So I had played fall baseball 2 years in a row, didn't like that, and then that turned into kind of introduction to wrestling, and slowly I really appreciated it in wrestling. I was very competitive, and so I always was drawn to it. I guess I'm kind of taking the long road to answer this, but I was drawn to the individuality of it, that you got out what you put in, and that there wasn't politics. Somebody's dad couldn't be the coach or couldn't build a baseball facility or like you name it and be the starter. It was 100% on you, and it was a level playing field. So we were, pretty wholesome like upbringing or whatever, right? We weren't well off or anything, and so you could because this kid had expensive cleats or nice bat or whatever, it didn't help him. It didn't matter who his daddy was, and so it was a level playing field always. And you won and lived, died by that sword, and I really thought that was awesome. I played in football. I was a quarterback, and it seemed unfair to care so much about the details of my job, and it's a very mental position and everything else. I really probably wasn't athletic enough to like play the position, but I was bright enough to do it. And so my mental preparation, whatever else, didn't really matter if the guy playing left tackle decides to take the play off. You get blindsided and eat one in the ribs, and you're sore for 3 days, and that guy's back on the next play, right? And so as a sophomore in high school, I just finished. I was going out for spring training my sophomore year of high school. Again, quarterback. We just gotten a coach from Hoover to come over. It was supposed to be a pretty big deal. Excuse me. And I remember walking off the practice field of spring training for football and just crossed paths with my high school wrestling coach, Mark Snyder. Incredible guy, like a father figure to me. And he said, "Elkins, what are you doing out here?" I was like, "Well, leaving football practice, coach." He said, "You play football?" I was like, "Yeah, and I'm kind of good at it too." I was like, "I don't know if you know, but I'm the quarterback." Like, it's kind of a big deal, My 16-year-old self, whatever. I think I just turned 16, and so why do you play football? And I was like, "Well, I think my exact words were, I'm kind of good at it,
Right, yeah.
And was appreciating all the social benefits of being a starter and all the things, right? And so, because otherwise wouldn't have been in those circles. And yeah, he basically said, "Do you want to do that in college?" I said, "No, I want to wrestle." He said, "You want to wrestle in college?" I said, "Yeah, yes, sir." And he said, "Well, you can't do that and play football. It takes too much of your time." And it wasn't like a negative conversation. It was just honest, because I wasn't very good. Like, I thought I was good at wrestling and I loved it, but I really wasn't very good, despite having more success than maybe anybody else. Relative to my goals, I was not where I needed to be. And so he said, "If you win 3 state titles, I'll get you a scholarship anywhere you want to go." He said, "Where do you want to go?" And I was, I'm like, Nebraska, or I don't know, maybe Appalachian State, which were basically the only 2 college campuses I'd ever stepped foot on. Sure. Funny how I whittled those down so quickly. But yeah, and so the next day I showed up and tried to turn in my shoulder pads, and the coaching staff like freaked out, in the coach's office of the field house at Hewitt-Trussville High School, and they were like, "Yeah, you can't quit, but like you got to finish spring training." And so they moved me to second string quarterback, started giving another guy reps, and I played a little tight end and some receiver. They're just trying to figure out how could they keep me on the offensive side of the ball, but not be reliant in the event that I wasn't going to be there. And that was it. I went from 3 sports to 1 that week. I played a little baseball after that, but it was very recreational. Yeah. That was a whole nother fun thing I did with my friends. But yeah, went from 3 sports to 1 as a sophomore in high school.
What was your high school experience like? Did you, from an education standpoint, did you feel comfortable in the classroom? Was it easy? Did you feel like you should be there, or what was that like? Yeah,
I was pretty smart. Like, my parents made sure that I made good grades and stuff, but there wasn't the expectation that I was an AB kid. I think I made maybe 2 C's in my life, and my dad made sure I didn't make 3. Sure. Yeah. Like he straightened me out. But I was taking like honors math classes and stuff. I was getting ready to take like all honors classes in high school, honestly. And my mom, shout out to Sherry, here I am giving her some more props. But I had awesome parents first off, and her advice to me, because she was kind of the scholar in the family, her advice was don't take all honors classes. And I was like, I just felt like that was the expectation she was going to have. And her advice was really counter to that and said, I want you to enjoy high school, and I don't want you to be spending all your time writing papers and doing whatever else that's really unnecessary. She's like, I did that. It's not going to benefit you, really. I want you to enjoy the social aspect and be able to be a kid a little bit and focus on sports and not be distracted by academics. And so I was able to balance all that. It was really fantastic, man. I got to I cared about wrestling and got to really focus on that craft, and it kept me out of trouble for the most part. School was not hard. If it was hard, it was because I wasn't applying myself, and a little bit of refocus by my dad's direction, and it was back
That's
on point.
How it happens.
Yeah, it was.
I'd be riding in the truck with my dad, and we'd just be riding. He'd be quiet, and he'd say, "Son, it's about time for an attitude adjustment."
Yep.
And he would say his piece, and then it'd be quiet in the truck for the rest of the ride home. Yeah, for sure. Because there's always a carrot and a stick in those scenarios generally.
Funny how that works. I find myself having those conversations with all the boys under our tutelage at this point, and I realize, we're all are pretty similar in that way, you know.
100%.
I joke and say boys are like dogs. Like, the Lord's got a sense of humor. He gave me 2 daughters because I don't know how to deal with daughters, but boys are
shocking.
Boys are, you can pretty well, like you said, there's a carrot and a stick, and that's it.
Yeah, and as you know, I have 4 boys and a daughter. And I've realized this value. I've been training jiu-jitsu with my 15-year-old. He's my oldest. And, if there's really, we don't really have any confrontation or problems at home because I think we settle it on the mat.
Yeah.
I think there's no question. He never tries to bow up on me at home. He never, breaks bad on me. Some of that is just his personality, but there's no tension on.
There's not a battle for who's alpha, because in a structured and safe environment, you settle that, and he goes, you know what? My dad can still whip my tail.
Yeah, and it happened.
You don't have to. Don't have to go visit that at the house.
Yeah, and I think there's some real wisdom and benefit there that I think that dads should start doing jiu-jitsu with their teenage sons. I mean, I think it's profound.
It is incredible. That is really the thing. So we've always kind of had a desire to do that with wrestling. Wrestling just doesn't really lend to, like, look, I don't want to wrestle at this point. I'm 33. Right, yeah. It's just a little different on the body. But jiu-jitsu is soft, it's gentle, more gentle, I should say. I mean, there's struggle in it for sure, right? We've talked a lot about this, but I think it's incredible for whittling those things away and sanding away. It's just something. The benefits are not gender exclusive to men, but I only have the experience of being a man, and it is incredible. It is incredible, the value of it to us and, our sons, our boys who are coming up. Like, it's so necessary.
The intimacy. Like, I can't, I don't, you haven't experienced this yet, but like having hard roles with my son, like, especially when they become teenagers, they don't want to hug you. They don't want to kiss you anymore. It's very intimate. Jiu-jitsu is very intimate from a male standpoint, and the closeness that you get with your training partners is pretty incredible. But if you already have, like, I already have that closeness with my son already, and so like just being intimate in that way is pretty profound. That I don't know that anybody's really talked about, or I haven't heard anyone really talk about it. But
100%,
it's pretty incredible.
A small spin on that is, so my brothers, we all have the gym together, and
sure.
The closest moments I ever have with my brothers, I mean, I would rather go do jiu-jitsu and roll with them than I had go sit down and have a beer at a bar with them.
Sure.
Bar none.
Yeah.
When we get done rolling and sorting it out between us, we'll sit on the mat and have a deep, heartfelt, meaningful conversation there. But we don't do that at a restaurant,
That's right.
We don't even do that on Sunday afternoon at Mom's house.
Well, all of the peripheral is burned away.
Yes.
Like, all of the angst, anxiety of the day, all that stuff is gone.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
It's incredible. I mean, for listeners, like, we are all 3 young men. We're 3 years apart. We're brothers. We all think the other one sucks,
Sure.
Somebody else talks about him, I kill him, but, like, personally, I get to talk bad about him,
That's right.
and vice versa. And so, like you said, when we get on the mat and scrap, we sort it out, and it burns all the peripheral away, and what's left there is just raw and intimate, and I mean, usually those roles end with a hug, and hey, love you, bro.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's pretty incredible too, because they're all, high level grapplers in their own way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're good. Like, don't get it twisted. It's not like you better bring it or they'll put it on you. You ain't trying to lose your little brother,
No.
Yeah, it is absolutely special. And something about grappling, that's kind of what we're I guess talking a lot about, is one of the real things is you get to know a person differently. My brother, I like to tell a story that Matt told about a guy, one of his training partners, Omar. So they're both fought professionally, and Omar's wife at one point, I guess, worked at the gym with him, and they were talking about something, or somehow I guess they kind of had words, and he said, "Let me explain something to you." I don't know what her name is. He said, "Let me explain something, Miss Johnson." He said, "I know Omar differently than you do." He said, "You're his wife. Y'all have kids together. You know him differently." He said, "But there are things that I know about that man that you'll never know, because when I kick him in the ribs, like, I know how he reacts.
That's right.
When I can feel when he quits. I know what his breaking point is, when he will not go further, and he knows mine. And because of that, we know each other differently than you will ever know your spouse." You understand? He said, it's impossible for you to know him in that way. And so, and it was a profound thing, because the truth is that is exactly how it works. I told just last night at practice, I told the kids, you have more in common with these other kids on the mat that you're training with, your training partners. You have more in common, and you know them better than the kid that you're a senior in high school. You know this guy that you scrapped with tonight better than the kid that you've grown up with in your high school and played other sports with your whole life. You know this kid better because you know his limits and he knows yours. He knows your breaking points. There's absolutely an intimacy to it and a rawness that like I say, it burns away the peripheral. And so it's really a beautiful thing. And what's crazy, I mean, here, this is why we're talking about it, because no one else is. It's really remarkable. You find some sound bites of Joe Rogan talking about whatever, and maybe gets a little follower or something, but this is the real conversation about that I think needs to be had.
Yeah, and I don't think that people talk about it that much. I mean, in some ways, but not. Yeah,
not with depth.
Yeah, and I've made this a priority. All my kids, we train together, and
it's powerful.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's a priority, and and even to the point that football is not interesting anymore to me. It used to be like I wouldn't miss it for anything, and now I'm like, man, it doesn't really affect me in the same way.
Not the same spark.
After what we've experienced in the gym. So pretty incredible. It's everything it's build up to be. It's not easy, but definitely. But anyway, we're already off in the deep end. But so give me some highlights and some lowlights on your high school wrestling that led into your college decision.
So, middle school, I was just I guess good for a local Alabama middle school kid, right? I was crazy passionate. I think my infatuation with wrestling, there was a huge gap, a chasm between my interest and passion for the sport and my skill. In high school, so I was like 135 pounds or whatever as an 8th grader. In 9th grade, I grew by the time 9th grade got here, I had grown 6 inches and wrestled 140 pounds. And so.
Oh, wow.
And I'd started out at like 160. I think I started the season at 163. So I gained weight as I grew, but then I went from, I got to the 160 weight class, and then there's a senior above me, best guy on the team was the weight above me, and then there was another senior above him, and every time they came down a weight class, basically I had to go down a weight class if I wanted to continue to have a starting position. Sure. And so that led me down to wrestling 140 pounds. And so I had this crazy, looking back, it's kind of funny to think about like how much work I was doing, but we just didn't have a path in front of us. Like there wasn't, my dad's answer to everything was just work harder, right. And that was it. And
which can be an answer, but it's not always the direct.
Right. Yeah. And it was a very, that belief system, shaped me dramatically. Right. And so that would lead to, we had we would have, you had school and we'd have practice for 2 hours or whatever, 2.5 hours. I'd go home, take a shower, eat some dinner, and then go to the track and go like run, 3 to 5 miles at night, usually wearing plastics and whatever else. If I wasn't at the track, I would go to the youth practice that my brothers were at and help them. And then sometimes I would like leave there and go to the track. I mean, I was always doing another workout in the evening. And then, for part of the year, we had 6 a.m. workouts, and then you had practice after school, and then I would go running at night. And I mean, I remember like for Christmas that year, I wanted a blender. And my parents were like, "You want a blender? What?" I specifically wanted a blender with a smoothie dispenser because I could take pina colada mix and mix it with ice, and it was like having ice cream.
Sure.
And it was, low calories. Or I remember eating massive amounts of Jell-O because it was no calories. So I could trick my stomach into like, hey, I'm full, but I hadn't eaten any calories. And so I knew nothing about nutrition, but was doing, honestly, like insane amount of work. I mean, just a unnecessarily stupid amount of work. And that I guess I tell that story to say that really became kind of the theme of my wrestling career. As a freshman, I qualified for the state tournament, which back then was pretty hard to do. It was like an 8-man tournament, and so qualifying was a big deal. I think I was the first person from my high school to do that. And then as a sophomore, didn't place. I thought I would be like in the state finals and didn't place. And so that led me to like this really focused path at the end of my sophomore year. As a junior, had a large amount of success, beat some nationally ranked kids. We traveled to Ohio and Georgia and a bunch of different places with our high school team, and I had multiple wins over really high-ranked kids, and then got upset in the state finals thinking it was going to be a walkthrough. Still did not reach the like goal, right? So I was supposed to be a 3-time state champ, right? That was the agreement that I made with my high school coach, and wound up being a one-timer. So I remember I lost in the state finals as a junior. It was the most devastating thing I'd ever experienced, like greater than any death I'd ever had as a family member or anything. And so I like broke up with my girlfriend at the time, like you name it, and all I did was drive to club practice and train.
Is that, you think, just from failed expectation?
Yeah, 100%. I remember, I can place myself I remember walking off the mat, stepping over the little rope that divided, you couldn't go past or whatever, walking through under the tunnel and under the bleachers and just crying like a freaking baby. I remember my brother coming back there and hugging me, and my dad, and I remember at some point shooing them away, and just wanted to be alone. And maybe for the first time, I don't usually say the word depressed, but like that was probably, if I was going to say depressed, maybe that was what it was. Like, just feeling like ashamed that I had how could I have such high expectations and then still not accomplish that, And I was doing things like writing I have an expression now, it's called writing my goals in my locker. Like I wrote my goals, I typed it out thousands of times and had it posted up on inside my locker. And so people thought that was silly and stupid, that it had my name, my weight class of the year, and state champion beside it. And every single person that oh yeah, state champ, and so to not do that, it was socially tough, and so nothing else mattered to me except having success that next year. And that led me to having a lot of success over the next 12 months. I placed at some big national tournaments and opened up a lot of doors to me and stuff. And, allowed me to go wrestle in college, but I realized that there were some false peaks there. I thought I was a lot closer to the top of the mountain than I was. And those things, those struggles, then, not the most fascinating or interesting story really, but those things are the same journey that we've helped hundreds of kids walk through now, right? We always say wrestling is life. There's a buddy, Izzy Martinez, runs Izzy Style in Illinois, and his kind of famous thing is wrestling is life. And the takeaways, the reflections, if you take away the principles of what happened there, like it is directly a parallel. And so as a high school kid, like, being a husband, being a father, being a businessman, whatever, like those things are all pretty far removed. You don't really care about that. Like you're thinking about, are you going to join a fraternity in college, and who's your girlfriend, what kind of car you drive, right?
Yeah, your understanding of the world is extremely limited. Sure.
At 100%, right? Again, I mean, losing a wrestling match is not a real big deal, but when you're 17 and your whole world revolves around that, it is a big deal.
When your identity is based around your success or failure.
Facts, right? And so, wrestling became the parallel. It became the platform to truly learn about life. And I think that life looks more like wrestling than it does a football team or baseball team. Like we all think that about youth sports, right? That, this is where, and everybody, listen, I love the game of football. I love the game of football, right? And it's a pretty cliche thing here in the South to, for people to talk about back in high school and their team and their coach and their, and back in the glory days. And then people relate that to life. But like, life is not a team sport. It's an individual sport.
Buddy.
It is an individual sport. And if you don't do your job individually, they will fire you and find someone else to do your job. And if all the individuals do their job, then the business will have success, right?
And you might be able to hide.
Exactly.
But ultimately, if you continue to not do your job, you will be revealed.
Yeah. And if you show up and do an incredible job, it becomes, when we were kids, everybody was, start your own business, whatever else. Now we teach what we call the entrepreneurial spirit, right? You be an entrepreneur, and wrestling teaches that. And it is a short feedback loop into what you do and what you get out of it. There's a direct correlation all the time, every time.
You can't hide.
There is no hiding. And when you improve small parts of what you do, it just transfers directly. It is a direct correlation. My college coach has a favorite thing to say ever. It's a direct correlation, and it is. I hated him when he was saying that at times back then, but there's direct correlation between what you do and your preparation and the success that you get to have and are allowed to have, and then kind of because you care so much about wrestling and it became such a huge part of my life throughout high school and then obviously in college. I mean, I went to a little school in South Carolina, Newberry College, Division II program, and I went there without even asking if they cared the major that I was looking for. I wanted to be an engineer.
Yeah.
Didn't even know or care.
Non-factor.
Non-factor. I said, what do you mean y'all don't have engineering? Sitting in a meeting with my advisor, and she was like, we don't have an engineering program. Like, I don't know how else to tell you that. And I said, all right, let me level with you. I was like, I came here to wrestle. Okay. Like, that's why I came here. I said, so what can I study while I'm here? Because I got to study something. And anyways, and so wrestling, it being such a huge part of my life, it also became the platform where my faith was growing as well, because it was a place for me to take the things I was reading in my devotional or in my Bible and prepare my hands for battle and my fingers for glory, right? And or it's all the struggles, like, because I could directly see my struggles, I could relate those things to what I was reading that Paul is writing in the book or whatever, right? And my struggles might have been first world problems, right? But they were still my problems. They were still my struggles. They were still the things where I was learning my craft. And so when I don't have the struggles of the world, because I don't live in the real world yet, I'm in college and an athlete, it was the place where I got to practice those things and hone them, and it prepared me to be able to do that as an adult. I got married at a young age, started having kids long before anybody should have been doing that. And so, 22 years old with 2 kids, married, and trying to start a business in a way, like, there's not a model to be a club wrestling coach and support a family. That doesn't exist. If you want to be a wrestling coach, you go get a teaching job and teach at a school, or you become a college coach and spend 10 years grinding away and traveling the country, bouncing around from job to job. And so it was really freaking hard, is the bottom line. And I was only able to do any of that because I had spent that time learning those things. I had wrestling and the things that wrestling taught me as it's, in its own way, and then the things that I was learning about my faith and how they correlated allowed me to transfer that to being a business owner and a husband and father, all the things, right?
Yeah, so basically what was happening was there was a maturity that was happening. And and you and I have talked about this in pretty good depth is what we're really looking for our children is maturity.
Yes.
Emotional, spiritual, physical maturity. And so, as you went through college, that maturity was happening at a rapid pace.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like you said, just because the fact that you can't hide, I could avoid going off down the rabbit hole, but there is a maturity that has to happen, and grappling just undeniably teaches that at a rate that you can't get anywhere else. So whether that's jiu-jitsu or whether that's wrestling, that's why we're passionate and screaming that from a megaphone. That's why we're all on social media doing the things that we're doing at Ironclad Wrestling and whatever, because I believe this is the thing that everyone is missing. We talk so much and care so much about youth development and our kids, but what's missing in society, they learn not just can learn those things, they will learn those things on a mat. They will learn those things. All the things that karate promises and puts on a flyer and under delivers on, wrestling and jiu-jitsu over deliver on, especially wrestling at a young age. I think there's a point when jiu-jitsu becomes the way, because early there's not enough kids jiu-jitsu, and a lot of times it's too watered down.
Right.
But as you become a teenager, jiu-jitsu becomes also an appropriate place to do that, and definitely as you become an adult, it's really the only place to do that, right? So, but it's what we're all missing. It's what every single adult wants for their kids, what every single parent wants for their kids, really, even for themselves. And it might be painful. You might find that in another place at a CrossFit gym, or there's other outlets that you can learn those things, but man, there ain't anything quite like it on being on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, Jimmy Buffett's got a line. He said in one of his songs, he says, "Don't try to describe a Kiss concert if you've never seen it." And then he says,
"That's so real.
Don't try to describe the ocean if you've never seen it." It's kind of the same way. It's hard to describe what happens, and if you've just never experienced it. And so, highly recommend it. Not easy path, but I highly recommend it. So as you're going through college, transitioning into after college life, when I got finished with college, I was without a doubt the most lost in my life that I've ever been. I had zero direction, because up to that point, it was such a struggle for me I was, played Division I baseball, and I should have never really been there, honestly. And I was there mainly just because I kept showing up. And it was a struggle for me the whole time I was there to keep up and to compete. And that had an effect on my academics. I barely made it across the finish line from a graduation standpoint, but I did. But after I was done, I had really not thought much about anything else except for surviving and finishing. And so I was lost. What was that? When did you start thinking about life after wrestling? Because, there's no pro wrestling really. I mean,
yeah.
And eventually that dream runs out for all of us.
So that was a huge concern, right? I mean, my roommate at the time was Zach Anderson. He was, he and his brothers, two of his brothers, the three of them are all top 10 fittest in the world in the CrossFit Games. They're top 10 games finalists. And so he's a freaking stud. He was the first one to do that. He was my roommate, best friend at the time. And we were both talking about, what are we going to do? When we get done, are we going to open a wrestling club together? Are we going to open a gym? Or should we just go fight in the UFC? We were watching guys that, we're like, dude, you can, if you grapple, if you wrestle, you can watch that and go, no, I can do that. It's
sure, sure.
If you're a baseball player and you go, that guy throws 85, I can hit an 85-mile-an-hour fastball. Facts. He's got a little slider too. Okay, cool. At some point he's going to have to throw me a fastball.
That's right.
Right. And so I remember I was trying to talk about that, were we going to try to be UFC fighters? And now I've got a ton of friends and teammates who've all done that, and it's a weird thing to know that if you just chosen that path, feel like you could do that, right? Barring injury and crazy things, right? But we were talking a lot about that, and it just didn't seem like we both kind of thought that was a selfish endeavor. And so by the time I was finishing college, I was married, had my second daughter right before I finished, within weeks of finishing school, and it just wasn't the way. It wasn't going to be the thing. And so I remember my ex-father-in-law now asking me, what I was going to do. And I was like, I'm going to coach wrestling. And he was like, oh, cool, at a school and whatever. And I was like, no, sir, not at a school, oh, like in college. Like, I think he said high school. I said, no, sir, not high school. Oh, like in college. And I said, no, sir. He's like, not in college. I said, no. And basically, he kind of liked my answer as far as college goes, because it was basically like, well, I might be in, Kansas, and I'm taking taking your daughter and grandkids with me if that happens. So he appreciated that, but he didn't understand. And again, there wasn't just a clear path in that. And so I was like, I'm going to start a wrestling club. He's like, is anybody doing that? And I was like, no, sir, no one else is doing that yet, and so because there wasn't a path, I always felt like that was what I was supposed to do. But I did not know how to do it. I did not know what I was going to do. I mean, I understood what that looked like, what I had observed as far as that goes. But it was kind of scary, I mean, and I did a bunch of odd and end stuff. I mean, I worked at the coal mine to make ends meet. I taught electrical at a maximum security prison. That was a super fun gig. I did that for a few months and kind of followed in my uncle's footsteps. And
wow.
Talk about an interesting thing. Go talk to a bunch of lifelong inmates and tell them not to cross you, because you don't want to, like, hey, I know I'm my Uncle Kenneth's nephew, but I will not call a security guard. I will beat you up first and then call a security guard. 22 years old telling a bunch of grown men how that works.
Convicts.
Yeah, I was like, what am I going to do if they have a shiv? I didn't really think that through, but I let them know, and thank God they didn't cross me. It was anyway. So I had a bunch of funny stories that kind of go with all that, but did a lot of cool odd and end things that were just fun for me, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. It was hard. I don't know that I really answered the question, but there was a lot of just trying to figure it out, and that was not always easy on my family or anything else. But I don't know. I just had that. I knew that I couldn't go do something else. I mean, that would have been a really cool. The job at the prison specifically there's a lot of security in that, but I couldn't make myself do it because I knew that it would take away from what I felt like I was supposed to do. And so maybe that might not have even been the right answer for my family at the time, but I knew it wasn't the right answer. Doing that also wasn't the right answer for me.
Right.
And the calling I felt in my life,
So, Ironclad, which is your wrestling gym, and you run it with your brothers.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome.
Super cool.
How did Ironclad become a reality in the beginning? And I don't know that this is the case, but Ironclad is one of the largest youth wrestling clubs in the state, correct?
Yeah, it's the largest in the state, and there's some other clubs and stuff too, but it's definitely the largest. I think our mission's a little different than others. There's some other good places to train, but I think our mission's a little different. So it's the largest in the state, one of the largest in the country, really, because of the kind of model that we've adopted to do that. Yeah, it's fun.
How did it become a reality? Like the reason I say that is because it started from nothing. And how did it become a reality? And then what is? These are multiple questions here, and so we'll try to cruise through them. But how did it become a reality? What is Ironclad? And what's your vision for kind of the ultimate vision for that club?
So I started coaching at Together. I was going to start my own club and wound up teaming up with a guy that had kind of been my club coach for like my last year of high school. He was the only guy really running a club back home at the time.
What year is this, Jake?
This is 2012.
Okay.
And so started coaching together. He was a really good coach, not always a good person, right? And at some point he had his life spiraled out of balance and caused a lot of problems. And I really ultimately, he was my best friend, at the time. And, but again, was a very incredible coach. Knew wrestling well, whatever, but again, was not a good person. So as his life kind of spiraled out of things, I realized that we couldn't work together. It was really a liability at that point. And so, walked away from that cold turkey, didn't call, it was terrifying, honestly, because I was really hell-bent on handling that with certain ethics that was pretty freaking terrible. It was a huge thing of faith, and man, God just worked it out. Things started coming together that literally doesn't make sense. If I gave you all the details, you'd be like, no way, or like, why didn't you just call those people? I mean, if the guy wasn't a good guy, but I just didn't want to do it that way. And so, yeah, man, people started coming to us. It wasn't easy, but we were running a wrestling club out of high school.
Because you didn't have facilities. So
yeah, we didn't have facilities. Yeah. So we were running, basically renting out high school wrestling room, running a business out of there.
There was no youth program, so it filled a need for the high school.
So we would train their it benefited the high school because we were helping train their athletes, and otherwise they're not going to get training, right? And then other people would come in from other different communities and pay us or whatever. And so, we were running a business, but we were really treating it more like a nonprofit. And if somebody couldn't pay, then okay, you can't pay, and maybe that's unfair to the next person that is paying, but like pay what you can, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And so we did that for a couple years out of schools. I say a couple years. That was so 2012 through 2015, I was coaching AWC. 2016, I started Ironclad. And I remember a Sunday in 2020, March of 2020, we had 100 people on the mat at a single wrestling practice on the mat. And I was just like, I remember just having this moment sitting against the wall. I thought I was going to cry in front of all these people. They're drilling takedowns, and I was like, I made it. I was like, God, this was so hard. Like, but we freaking made it. There's 100 people here today, like, because there were days I showed up to practice and not one person was there, like I remember those days, still do, hoping that there wasn't one kid, because the only thing worse than no kids is one.
Kid. Oh my gosh, yeah. Because then you actually have to have practice.
Yeah. You can't even go home,
Right.
And or 3 kids. I mean, it's just painful, And so I had 100 kids, and I was like, man, this is incredible. And within 2 weeks, COVID hit. That was late March. So within 2 weeks, COVID hit, and we got kicked out of the school, couldn't be there. And I was like, oh no, what are we gonna do? It's hard to timestamp that now, but we had no idea.
I think we all remember when that was happening, because we were all in panic mode.
Yeah, like what the heck is going on? And so that led to me calling. I just was looking at commercial real estate and stuff, and it was a nightmare. Like I was, people were not going to the real estate market. Commercial real estate was plummeting. That no one's going out to rent a building right now. You can't have customers in your facility. And so rather than the cost of commercial real estate going down, they were trying to raise the cost. And I was like, listen, this doesn't work. Like, there's just no way. And
5-year leases.
Yeah. Sweet. $20,000 down. And I was like, I'm not bankrupting myself for forever.
That's right.
Over this kind of thing. And so I just started calling a couple of dads that I knew that were businessmen and successful, and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm not calling for a handout. Like, I know that you know people, and I think what we're really looking for is some business owner that's got a warehouse that he's just not using, like, or he's got a side of it that he's not using, and we could rent some space from him and throw it down. And here's what we're trying to do for these kids, and I'll figure out whatever their parameters are. We'll work together." And I called Steve DeMedicis. He would probably be upset if knowing that I called him out by name, but called him and said, "Steve, I know you know a lot of people," and he said, "We got this little old bank. You need to maybe it would work. I don't know." Like I said, "I'll ask around, but maybe we'll do this bank." And so I don't know what. Just the way he described this place was like I think I was thinking of like a mobile, like a single wide with a teller line or something.
Yeah. Which is not what it is.
Yeah, and it's not. It's 2-story building, and it's 20,000 square foot, and it's incredible. There's a vault, and it's laced in granite, and I'm like, Steve, I called him. He's like, "Yeah, just go in there and look and see." And I'm like, "I'm not at the right building. This is not. Like, I got the wrong address." Right. He said little, and so man, we can somehow gutted it and converted a bank into that, and he's been the best dude ever, man. What
Yeah,
an
if
incredible
anybody
guy.
talks bad about Steve Dominicus in my presence, they're catching it.
That's right. We're gonna fight.
We're
gonna fight. Yeah. And little did I know, there was this guy Jeremy who owned a business across the street, and we became best friends, and we're sitting here talking about it today. You know, so
yeah, incredible.
Crazy how life works the way it's supposed to. You know.
What do you what do you want? I know this is not an easy question, but what do you want? What do you see Ironclad being in its best form?
So we have, man, I want to revolutionize the wrestling and grappling world by putting all of the information out there, making it readily available. And so what I often like to kind of point to this, and this is going to be a detractor for some people because they're going to have an opinion of what of this particular brand, but like CrossFit changed the fitness space. Okay, when you talk about fitness today, it looks different than it did 15 years ago. Okay, it looks different. Period. They completely changed the landscape, and they did that by there's a lot of negatives that have come from that because where things maybe weren't managed or there's poor coaching or something or whatever, right? There obviously people are you get injured doing CrossFit, whatever. Okay, I get you, okay, but there's a lot of things that CrossFit got right, and they completely revolutionized the landscape. And they created a model where people can open a gym and start a business around fitness, right? That didn't previously exist. That was not before that. You could go to Gold's Gym and YMCA, and that was kind of maybe what a gym looked like. Now CrossFit is a thing, okay, and so I want to create that in wrestling. Like I think Ironclad Wrestling is a thing. It's like no different than maybe Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, but I want to change the landscape of wrestling, and I want to do that by putting out the cracking the code. Like, what is the right way to do this from a developmental standpoint, technically, skill-wise, all these things. How do you get the most development in the least amount of time, the highest value training per hour, okay? But then I also want to, I'm publicizing these things. So we're making this readily available for 1/1000th of what it should cost, because ultimately I like to look at Christianity, right? Like the Bible is written in hundreds and hundreds of languages, maybe thousands of languages, I don't know. But it's right now they're trying to translate the Bible into literally every language on demand, right? That's the project that's going on right now. And so when you look at pastors, they all are reading the same Bible, but the guy or woman, whoever that you're drawn to, is the communicator of it. They're good communicators of the information in a way that speaks to your soul, right? And if they fall from grace or whatever else, then you find another person. You know what I'm saying? And so what happens is good people and good communicators rise to the top. You don't have to do a deal with the devil because they know some secret sauce
Sure.
or whatever else, right? And so I learned a lot from the first guy that I coached with. I learned so many things. And a lot of people say, I warned you about coaching with him and whatever else. And they all did, and they're right from that. But honestly, like, I'm not bitter about any of the wrong things he did. I learned so much from him, and it really molded me and shaped me, because there were a lot of people for a long time who went to this guy and learned wrestling and stuff because he was a good coach. He did produce good athletes and all things. And they knew that they were doing a deal with the devil, so to speak. They had to deal with these bad issues, but they were doing it because ultimately the end was worth the means, right? It was worth it to have the success for their son, so they could go to college or scholarship or be a champion or whatever. They would deal with this guy. And so our thing is, we're looking for good people, and we'll teach them wrestling. We'll train them. We'll coach them. We'll make it. We'll put the cookies on the bottom shelf. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so that really goes to my next question is good coaches, it seems to be a major bottleneck.
100%.
So I mean, how do you overcome that? Like, what's the and I don't really expect you to have an answer for that, because it's not an easy answer.
Like we always talk about iterations. I don't know that I have the final answer, but I know I've got an answer right now. It's at least an iteration of the answer, and if there's a better answer, we'll use it. We'll track that one. So the answer is training. I mean, our little mantra is training matters, right? And so you need training for coaches. and we have to do things that amplify coaches' time, multiply the coach's time, right? So that they're not the only bottlenecker. I mean, classic dilemma coach has, right? Hey, I love my athletes. I love wrestling, passionate. People don't coach wrestling because they make money. Like, dude, you make pennies on the hour, right? In fact, it's kind of hard to justify it to your spouse and your kids what you do, you know what I mean, typically. And so they coach wrestling because they love it and they believe in the benefits. They believe in all things. So a coach has to decide between, do I help this kid on my team who needs help or who wants help or who has goals, and we're going to unlock new possibilities for his life through the sport of wrestling, or do I go to my daughter's cheerleading game, or do I get home in time for dinner and spend time with my wife and prioritize my family the way that I should, and knowing that that's what's right and good. What do I do? I'm in a dilemma of time, right? And so we're using online training to reach people everywhere, to teach coaches, starting with why this is better, why this is different. I know this is not what you learned. Here's the backstory. Here's the problems it solves. Start with why. Teach these coaches the way, and that, you know, again, what we call the way will always be evolving, but teach them the way, and then teach them, create resources that allow them to leverage their time, so that they can reach the kid on their team and empower the kid on their team. There's not a textbook on wrestling, you know what I'm saying? And so we want to empower the kid. Hey, here's what you need to be doing right now. Here's what you need to be doing next, right? Everybody obsesses about 2 hours a day. Yeah, practice, but what about the other 22, right? That's a big idea from Dr. Mark Bubbs in his latest book, Peak, and he talks about the other 22. So what can we do for these people that puts us all on the same page, right? Coach, athlete, parent, everybody puts us all on the same page, and then equips this athlete to get better on his own time so that he can be getting better, not just when the coach is present and talking and saying the things and whatever. It's the coach is the bottleneck for everything. I know that in my own program. And it's true every single where else. That's why we place so much value on the success that a coach had as an athlete, or what coach he wrestled under, or whatever else. But even that has a huge fallacy in it, because oftentimes, not sometimes, oftentimes, maybe even the majority of the time, a good athlete does not directly make a good coach. They're very different skills, right? And so we're trying to create conversation around the training specifically for coaches and how to coach and get the most value per hour out of your training for your athletes.
And raising up young athletes to one day be equipped to become coaches 100%. As well.
Yeah. We have multiple athletes that are far. I mean, we have high school athletes that are leading their high school practice. So they're a sophomore in high school at our club, and they're leading their high school practice and teaching the technique and things like that. And I don't mean that to be a knock on their coach or something, but imagine a 16-year-old quarterback running football practice. Like, what?
Yeah, sure.
The shortstop running baseball practice never happened. You know what I'm saying? But that is what it looks like in wrestling. And so complaining about it doesn't really do any good. You gotta have a solution. So everybody likes to talk about growing wrestling. It's like the most buzzword everything in the sport of wrestling. Just grow wrestling. And sure, we can all like that, man, that sounds amazing, but what are people really doing to do that, right? And so it means, to me, the answer is we got to get rid of some of these pinch points, some of these bottlenecks, these problems, the real problems that cause us to lose traction, right?
So part of that is using technology.
Leveraging technology, 100%.
Yeah,
yep.
Part of that is raising up young coaches, using technology, using your programs, and just doing things differently than they've ever been done. So that leads me to another question: is what was the light bulb moment for you when you realized that you didn't have to continue doing it the way that it's always been done? Or was there a light bulb moment?
I don't know. I think it's 10,000 iterations. Like, we talk about that, Naval Ravikant, right? 10,000, not 10,000 reps, 10,000 iterations. Right. And so every time, the original goal ever was to just have, to teach youth kids, like what was happening. The problem that I was experiencing was we would have a kid who comes in who's 17 years old, he's been wrestling for 10 years, but he's freaking terrible. He's got a bunch of bad habits and bad technique, and he wants to win a state championship, and you're like, dude, it's too late, buddy. Like, and you can't look that kid in the eye and tell him it's too late and throw him away, but in your head, you know it's too late, right? If you got that kid as a sophomore, maybe. Freshman, you're like, okay, we got time. We can fix this. If you're willing to go through the pain of changing, we can fix it. So the original idea was just to coach to get into the youth kids. So I'll pause and say this idea. This is huge. So if you take a water bottle, okay, and you want to get all the air out of it, you can squeeze and twist and ball it up, whatever else, and whatever you want to do, but you can never truly get all of the air out of the bottle, right? No matter through how much pain, effort, squeeze, whatever, doesn't happen. The only way to get all the air out of the bottle is to put the right stuff in it. When you fill the bottle with water, all the air leaves. Right. Screw the cap on, right? So, and it's so much easier. So our idea was to go to the youth kids and put the right things in. And so then the question is, what are the right things? Like, how do I teach, 10-year-olds, like what do I teach them so that they grow up with the correct skills they need to do that, right? You can't take a kid who's in baseball and let him pick up his first ball in 7th grade or 9th grade. Like, what are we teaching them when they're 6? And then the real difference is, in baseball, like, what things are different? Well, the bat is smaller. We shorten the field a little bit. Whatever, right? But maybe the ball is smaller, right? There's some different size balls that they use as you age up. In wrestling, you're using the same mat, the same whatever, but your body, here's the tool, and so it's built differently. I like to reference a guy because I want to give him credit. Lee Roper is the assistant coach at UNI, who we just sent an athlete there, and I'm tremendously excited about. This dude is a savant. He's an incredible, bright mind, and he was a pioneer. He was a club coach doing the Lord's work on it when I was new in the thing, and so he went through some old Russian manuals, translated them, photocopied them, translated them. I mean, the most manual process, literally like taking the bindings out. I just recently got the answer from this because I was like, where did you figure this out? But like I saw
from Dagestan or something.
Oh, literally, like, dude, he was off in it. And it like, man, it excited me to hear him tell the story because I was like, man, that's where I'm at right now, So he's at the college level, but I have a ton of fun talking with him because he's thinking like that at a different level, and we get to compare notes and talk. And incredible guy, Lee Roper. But fascinating science was that they found the average 10-year-old's head weighs 12% of your body weight, right? So if you just take this study, all these studies, all this research you find becomes like the new banks of the river, and it guides you along the path, right? And so when you find that out, okay, the average 10-year-old's head is 12% of his body weight. What does that really mean? Well, it means that my head weighs 40 pounds. Like, well, buddy, if my head weighs 40 pounds, I'm not going to get in a wrestling stance, and I'm not going to shoot high crotches. I'm not going to hit my knee. I'm not going to. So every time you find out some new science, when you study biomechanics and physical development and all these different deep things, you have to become an expert generalist. You find all these different categories and start studying them. It starts to guide what we call the way, and you go, oh, well, if that's true, then now I can't teach. I can't yell at kids to get in a stance. If you don't have the development in your hips and knees to be in a stance, like number one, your head's too heavy. 2, you don't have the hip development at a young age to be in a stance like that, right? So, okay, now I can't even ask you to do that. Or we teach a drop step, this heel toe knee drop step thing, which is, it makes zero freaking sense. And like when you really take away all the preconceived notions and step back 40,000 feet and look at it, you go, none of this makes sense. Why are we doing this? And so if it doesn't make sense, then you start asking yourself what does make sense. And it just becomes all these questions.
It's self-perpetuating because you're like, it becomes endless because you're thinking, okay, if I'm wrong about this, you realize that you're wrong about something, you're wrong about this, then you realize, oh, I'm wrong about a bunch of stuff.
What else am I wrong about?
Right. And so
where did I learn this? Why do I think this? Like, well, where did I learn it? Okay, well, I learned it from him. Well, where did he learn it? Well, he learned it from that guy. You sent me a quote yesterday, amazing. Tom House, who's
the greatest of all time.
Brother, he's the GOAT. He
in baseball, throwing, football.
He's the dude. He is the dude, Tom House. And so he said, if you coach long enough, nothing that you teach will be the way that you did as an athlete.
That's right, as a player. Yeah, it's shocking.
And it's like, 100%. And so the thing that's really interesting, I read a cool book called The Perfect Pass. It's about Mike Leach and Hal Mummy, and I think you and I have talked about this some too. But he talks about this book is about the innovation of football. Okay, so Mike Leach is a pretty popular guy now, right, coaching SEC football and everything else. And so, but it talks about their story from West Texas Wesleyan University or some crap like that, and this guy, this lawyer from Pepperdine University who was making $5,000 a year as a football coach, and then how excited they were when he got a job for $12,000 a year. Like, it's like, what? And they were all anyways. And so, the book's amazing. I would recommend it to anybody that's an athletic coach or definitely a football coach, but it's the history of the innovation of football and talks about all these ideas and whatever. And I'm obsessed with the book. But if you look at wrestling, grappling, where we are today, we are about 90 years behind where football is today. Like when you look at the offensive coordinator's mind and the way they play the game and the way they strategize and tactically develop and where they are, we're about 80 or 90 years behind what they're doing right now. The good news is it won't take 80 or 90 years to correct that.
Right. Because there's a path.
There's a path.
Yeah. So like that kind of brings me to this point. I'm gonna read you this statistic. I came across this and I thought it was pretty incredible. It was a 2019 survey done, and is a national survey on students ages 13 to 17 who participate in any sport on a regular basis. Out of 18 sports, where do you think wrestling ranks?
I'm going to say last.
17 out of 18. Just above field hockey.
Just above field hockey.
I didn't even know field hockey was actually played in anywhere. Like honestly, I really had to look up what it really was because I thought it was like some type of lacrosse. Like,
yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Like I don't even.
Like, I think that's what I think it is right now.
Right.
I'm like, wait, lacrosse has gotten better than that.
Yeah,
we're 18th.
Field hockey is not lacrosse. It's a whole nother thing. So there you go. Okay.
Oh man.
So
painful.
14 times participation is 14 times higher in basketball than wrestling. 14 times. I mean, so there's a lot of catch up.
A lot.
Like, and so how does that really? How does that happen? I know we've discussed it a little bit. Obviously, there's part of the problem is it's not accessible. Like, yes. Because there's not enough. It's self-perpetuating again. Not enough kids play it, so there's not enough coaches, so there's not enough interest, and so people don't understand the benefit, and so
right.
it's kind of a dead end. There's some type of a feedback break.
Yeah, 100%. It's not a kids are shooting basketball in the driveway every day, right? Kids are they're playing wiffle ball in the front yard, backyard, whatever else. They're throwing and catching the football and playing tackle football in the street or whatever. Like, those things are so readily accessible and so ingrained in our culture, and wrestling is not. But what's interesting, so wrestling is in our DNA.
100%.
It is in our DNA.
Just anybody who has boys, especially boys that are close in age.
Put two boys in the bedroom, shut the door, watch what happens in 20 minutes.
It's a fight.
Come back. Your mom's screaming, going, "What are y'all doing up there?" Right? Facts. I got two daughters. Half the time they wind up doing some of that. You know what I mean? I'm like, golly. And so it is in our DNA. And so it's not readily accessible. People don't know what to do or how to do it. They don't understand that if I create an outlet for my boys to, and again, it's not gender exclusive, right? But I think they should be done differently. I guess I'll go on record saying that the way that we treat boys and girls in the sport of wrestling should differ. And we are 99% boys in our program. So I generally say boys to be, if I'm being politically correct.
Yeah,
anyway, so with boys, it is, people don't understand that if I take them and give them this outlet and have them do it, that they will actually like behave better at home. Like, it's crazy. So we get youth wrestlers, which is basically beginner kids, 6th grade and under, K through 6th grade. They come in, 90% of them never wrestled before every year. And 3 months in, we dismiss them. They go off to baseball, right? And so when that happens, I see the parents at a restaurant or whatever else, or phone call, whatever. We run into each other, and they're like, "Dude, I didn't realize how much like wrestling was changing my kid. He's a savage. He acts like an animal at the house now because he's not getting his energy out at baseball practice, you know. And the wrestling, like, dude, there's something more that we don't understand about it. To be honest.
And honestly, there's a couple of non-negotiables in my family, and being in the gym in the fall and winter is 100%. Now I got a couple of baseball players. I got year-round swimmers. I've got, you know, the guys that they love basketball. Yeah. But in the fall and winter, we stop what we're doing. We stop baseball. We might train and hit baseballs and stuff, but we're going to be in the gym 100%. So wrestling and jiu-jitsu in the fall and winter for us, and summer swim for the physical, to knocking the top off. Like, you got to knock the top off of that energy. You can't expect these kids to do right if they're over capacity, especially when they start getting hormonal 100%. And they can't deal with the amount of energy and the level of energy that is stored.
No, they can't at all. They can't at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I bet you that you all the time, like, I got to get my kids back in the gym, right?
Got to all the time. Like, every time. I mean, literally every single time. I don't know that I have a conversation with parents that isn't somehow like, hey, listen, man, we got to get back in there. And sometimes we don't elaborate and go to the second half of that part, and they tell me all the reasons why, but they say it all the time, right? And so the thing that kind of that goes with what we're talking about now and what we were just talking about with the lack of participation too is that grappling's tough, man. It's tough. And so I always tell people, you know, like using baseball, I love to point to baseball because you understand at a high level and we get to have that talk. And I was probably better at baseball than I was. I was definitely better at baseball than I was football or wrestling and whatever, was drawn to this, you know. Sure. And so but in baseball, kid strikes out, right? So the success rate is not real high, okay? If you're 30, you know, 333, then you're the man.
Superstar, yeah.
You're the man, right? And so
failure is baked in.
Failure is a huge part of it. Fact. Well, when your kid strikes out, like, how do they act? How do they like it? How do they, like, they don't like it at all, okay? Okay, well, wrestling is, like, if you strike out, then the pitcher gets to peg you with the baseball.
Right.
Because there's a physical component to it. They're mashing your nose in the mat. It don't feel good. You know what I'm saying?
Or they're chicken winging you, and you're walking out of there with a sore shoulder.
And so it's not fun. I mean, we have kids, they cry, you know, like they're like, a lot. Or there's times that they're like, I don't want to go. Of course they don't want to go. It's hard. Like, it's difficult. You know what I'm saying? Dude, you know what? I am very efficient on a mat. Like, if I'm wrestling jiu-jitsu, I'm better than most of the people that I'm grappling with. And so what I do that's really hard is I go to CrossFit, and it crucifies my soul. I don't want it. My fiance loves it. All my friends are there. I mean, I get to hang out with them, but like, I basically just poor man talk it the whole time there. I'm like, this sucks so freaking bad. I'm like, you know, I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for her. And, you know, like, I just, like, because I seriously hate it.
You go because it's
good for me. Yeah. I feel like a cat being stuffed in a bathtub. I'm on the way there, you know. And so the kids are like that with grappling. It's freaking tough. It's not as easy as basketball. Of course they want to play basketball. And I'm not saying that basketball doesn't have some benefits. No, it's good. But, dude, come on.
Listen, and we've talked about this a lot, and I'm trying to wrap my head around this in a more conscious way, subconsciously, intuitively. I know this to be true. My kids need to be in the gym. If I did not say, hey, kids, we're not going to wrestling practice or we're not going to jiu-jitsu tonight, they are not complaining.
They are not upset about it at all.
They're not upset. But we go because it's hard.
It's hard.
And you've got to confront the difficult, hard things. And that's really even on a knuckle dragger level. Like, I'm thinking, okay, we're going because this is hard and that's the only reason. But the benefits, I think, are even far outside of my knowledge and understanding. But I know that we got to go because it's hard, and because the fact that you don't want to go is the reason that we're going.
100%. And so you know, you don't want to. You get in the car, Johnny. You're going.
No, it's not like that. It just becomes an expectation. Like,
right.
It's never an option. It's like it's like going to church on Sunday.
That's right.
We're gonna go.
That is exactly it.
Right.
You go. Listen, I get it that you probably don't want to do this right now because you're a kid, and you know, just like you don't want to eat your vegetables. I tell people it's the vegetable talk. Like, hey, listen, I know you don't eat broccoli. You're gonna eat 3 bites. Like, you're gonna eat 3 bites, and 3 bites is a representation. In my house, you can eat anything. You can eat a whole chicken in 3 bites if Troy Elkins is there. Okay, like just 3 bites. You're like, dude, it's fajitas. like you could eat an entire order of fajitas in 3 bites if Troy Elkins around. That bite wasn't good. You didn't have enough on your fork. No, that didn't count. I didn't see that one. Like, okay, so that's kind of a funny joke at our house, but you gotta eat your vegetables. It's not I'm not asking you. You're gonna eat your freaking vegetables, or you're gonna sit right there until you do. Like, you know. So
when we first, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when we first started and we were just learning about what Ironclad was, I wanted my kids to do jiu-jitsu, you know, and I see jiu-jitsu on the window, and I go in, and Marcus is there, and I don't remember if you were there or not, but Marcus was there for sure, and he said, well, we don't really have kids jiu-jitsu classes. Really what they need to be is wrestling. He said wrestling is the second best thing you can do other than take your kids to church.
Yep. And
I was like, that's pretty definitive. I mean, I know the benefits of taking my kids to church. Wrestling is the second best thing I can do.
Yeah, like that's pretty bold statement there.
I didn't even know this was that important.
Yeah.
But you apparently think it is. And he's 100% right. Like
100%. And so what happens is, so you have to, again, you just have to explain to them, hey, listen, you know, I know you don't understand this, but this is good for you, and it's important because right now you don't care about this, but this is a skill that you need. Just, I mean, kids don't want to go to school, right? Like, it's not negotiable. I'm not like, listen, you know, Emmy Lou didn't want to go to school today, so I kept her home. Like, no. Mm-hmm. Emmy, your tummy hurts because you don't want to go to school? Yeah. Yep, that sucks. I'm so super sorry. Get your breakfast, get in the car, let's go, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is, I didn't realize this. You know, it's really interesting. As a young person, you don't, whatever, you don't know, right? Like you don't know. We were talking last night at practice that I'm like, listen, dude, y'all are teenagers or younger than that. Like, so you got this body and like, you don't really know how the tool works yet. You just got it. Like you don't have enough reps with it. You don't know when it's working right and when it's working wrong, you know, which is why they don't understand nutrition. Like they don't understand when the machine's running, you know, when they put premium fuel in it or jet fuel in it versus 87 unleaded, or when there's sugar in the tank. Like they don't know, you know, when it's working.
I mean, I didn't understand how important nutrition was till I was probably in my 30s at least.
Exactly.
Maybe worse.
Which is a whole other can of worms, right? That we could dive in.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, listen, you need this. It's important. So it's wrestling, grappling is like PE on steroids. It's physical literacy. At least it is in the way that we approach it. And so there's all this failure. There's all these things that we kind of already talked about and we're unpacking, right? But like you learn to deal with anxiety because just like you were talking about, you're getting ready to go to jiu-jitsu and like, you know, like, dude, there's no one there that's going to hurt you. There's nothing. But you're a grown man. You're like, man, this is tough, right? Before kids are wrestling, they're running the bathroom 10 times because they're nervous and you know, like everything, their body is doing things that they don't really understand. Like they think they're sick. You're like, no, you're not sick. You're just a little scared, you know? And so, no one was talking about any of these things. I just have all these experiences. And as I got older, I realized, I remember the first time in like high school, into high school, and then during college, I started hearing people talk about test anxiety. And I'm like, test anxiety? Like, what is that? And they're like, yeah, when you get like anxious because you're going to like take a test, you know, like you just don't feel good and it's scary. And what if you get back? And I was like, to take a test, bro? Right. Like, shit, like, dog, if you get a bad grade on this, like, my dad's not even going to see the C on the test. He's going to say, like, I'm still going to have a B in the class. Like, it's cool, you know? In wrestling,
it's the biggest thing in their life.
It's the biggest thing in their life.
Right. But what happens is you get out and you realize that you're going to battle with another guy and that potentially he's going to inflict physical harm on you. It changes your perception of what is scary and what is not scary.
I'm like, we're in history class. I'm like, listen, if I get a bad grade on this quiz, Coach Khan's not going to come bounce my forehead off the desk. You know, like in wrestling, it'd be like that.
That's right.
You know, I got this funny uniform on, like I'm exposed. There's a girl that I think's cute that I got a crush on that's here, and I might lose in front of her. Like that's a whole different world of problems. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And honest and the truth is that if you go out in the world, if your kids go out in the world, and this is something that I'm thinking about on a daily basis. If my kids go out in the world and they've never encountered difficulty and struggle, I have failed them as a dad.
Fact.
I mean, and not only in a little way, but could be catastrophic. Like
100%.
if they encounter difficulty and struggle for the first time as an adult, it's a good chance that they don't have the tools to deal with it. And they end up on SSRIs, or they end up self-medicating through drugs, alcohol, food, whatever, and with failed relationships because they don't have the tools to deal with difficulty.
That's literally, I mean, look, every parent, that's what we want for our kids, right? That's our whole thing this is what I want for my kids. I'm trying to prepare them to be successful humans. I'm trying to fix the things that I think that my parents got wrong or the things they got right or whatever. I want to get that right with my kid, and I'm going to make sure that they are successful contributing members of society, right? And like what you just said is the gospel. Like we all care about that. So the only thing we're really talking about is what's best for them. What is the best thing to do for that, right? And the hard part is as a parent, like you can't really communicate all those ideas sometimes to your kids. You need someone else to be the teacher. You know what I mean? Because of the relationship of the love of a father to a child or a mother to a child. Like you're often not the best instructor, right? You need someone else to be the bad guy so that you can be loving, so you can be the hero, you know. And so you have to put your kids in a place where they can. Well,
and this is the truth is that you know every child is different, and their ability to connect with people is different. And so if you are able to if I'm able to realize that one of my children connect well with Coach Marcus, and he can connect with them on a level that's different than what I am or what somebody else can be, then that's worthwhile. Yes. Like that's significantly worthwhile because you know when you have breakthrough is where you have growth, and so whatever that takes, and so you know being open to that is super important for sure.
It's so cool. So we run a business. We treat it like a nonprofit, and probably are going to open up a nonprofit with it, right? And when people ask me what I do, I'm like, when I run a wrestling program, and you know, but we treat it kind of like this halfway step to church, right? I mean, when I was 14, I didn't want to go to church. You know what I'm saying? I didn't really want to go. When I was 17, I went. Mom drugged me, right? But it wasn't speaking to me because that just wasn't things I cared about. The things they were talking about in big church weren't like they're talking about marriage and divorce and like paying your bills. So I don't have to know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so we treat it like a halfway step though, because again, it is what these kids care the most about is freaking winning. And maybe they care about it because they're trying to impress some girl at school and then that's all they really care about. Or maybe it's because, they want a scholarship and they want to pay for school and they don't have the money to do that or whatever. There's other reasons why.
Or they a 15-year-old, they like how they look with their shirt off.
100%. Yeah, right. Like, yeah, because they got a picture of themselves looking jacked and now they can put that on social media, whatever, right? Like they got abs or something and whatever it is. There's something else they care about, but that makes them care about winning, right? And so, but we take we take kid across the country to a national tournament. We fun, friends, fundamentals, success. They start wanting to compete. We try out, and so we're on the other side of the country. We're in Iowa, and or we're in Wisconsin, or wherever the heck we are. And this kid loses. Where like they've been training for months to do this. We're in Fargo, North Dakota. They just gave up their whole summer to train for this moment, and they lost in a moment that they thought they could win, and then it runs away from them. And they're devastated. And so you get this kid over in the corner and he's crying and broken and whatever else. And because you've spent time with him, because y'all have built rapport, because you've been to battle together, whatever else, when he's devastated and lost right there, like you can witness to the kid, right? And you get to talk about like
your identity is not found in winning and losing.
Winning and losing.
And the work that you do is way more important than the outcome.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. And so
that the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
Sun's going to come tomorrow, and
you get another shot.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I have this quote written down in several of my journals, but it says, "When a man is worn down, beaten, and broken, he's truly ready to learn something." And so like I said, all the peripheral is torn away. Dude, you are raw. You're in a singlet in some freaking arena, and there's 10,000 people around. And you're in the corner crying. There's people walking by watching you. Or maybe you've run off in the tunnel and you're under the bleachers and we had to go find you. You know what I mean? But, dude, you don't care about nothing else. and you're broken, and then all of a sudden you're ready to listen.
That's right.
And so when that happens, it's worth the 10,000, the 50, the 100. Like, it's worth any number of dollars, right? I mean, the parents spent $1,500 and has been driving them to and from practice, whatever else. Like, dude, you want your kid to learn that, like that. And dude, you know what's crazy? Is when that happens and those moments happen, like, you can feel the Holy Spirit all over you, dude. Like, it is so freaking real. And when I was dating my fiance, now we get married in November. Can't wait. She's better than me. Don't tell her, cut that out. But we,
they all are better.
Man, when she rock star, golly. We all married up. We all did well. Woo. And so I told her I was in Wisconsin at World Team Trials, and I told her there was a moment like that had happened. It just happened, and I was just kind of prime. And then I watched two other kids. These kids are 14 years old, and I just watched a dog fight of a match. I mean, I was just watching. These two kids went to war, and one of them won, one of them lost. Like, that was the rules they agreed to, and they're out there. But it was like special. And I remember texting her and just saying, like, listen, I know I'm away from you and whatever else, and you wish I was home, and like, but I need you to understand, like, I'm always going to do this right here. Like, I'm always going to do this. This is, like, I love it. Like, I was like, I just had this moment, and I just watched this battle, and I don't get to have, like, that doesn't happen if I'm in Birmingham. Like, this is this meeting of people that have the same, like, disease that I do. We all love this freaking thing, wrestling, and we all understand what it really gets, and we're all crazy committed to it. And we travel the country and act like crazy people because this is there's a cathedral, like, happening right now. There's a symphony orchestra happening in here right now, and, like, I was like, if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna travel on this road, if we're gonna continue dating, if we're gonna get married, if we're gonna have a family, like, you have to understand that I'm always gonna do this. This is me, you know. And it was an honest moment that I got to have with my wife, right? And she was like, I love it. Awesome. Because she has her own things like that, right?
Sure.
But the reality, so I guess what I'm talking about, though, is that there is something that is so powerful in that, and, like, that's what we're really trying to do with wrestling, right? Like, and I can't do that for every single person, but if we can train other leaders and teach them those things and help them understand what's important, they can all do it with their own 10, 20, 50 kids. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, and you know, I thought about the other day is wrestling discipleship.
That's exactly what it is.
And yeah, I think that's the key, and that's really what I'm interested in, especially in this podcast, is figuring out ways to help kids become mature. And how that happens, honestly, the model is pretty clear. It's through discipleship, right? Yeah. And so, like, what does that mean? Well, we're going to figure it out, you know, for sure. Yeah. That kind of leads me to another question that, and we've talked a lot privately about confidence and where it comes from. I think most parents would all agree they want their children to be confident, right?
Yes. True confidence, not...
True confidence. And I don't know how many really know how to help them achieve confidence.
Yep.
Like, you know, play a sport. It'll help their confidence. You know, get good grades. It'll help their confidence. We need to get them braces. That'll help their confidence. You know, right? Like,
100%.
Like, those are some, like, big things. But, like, how do you gain confidence? Like, this is a kind of a softball question for you, but where does confidence come from?
So competency, right? So our model, again, this is, we start with kids. Our whole model is fun. You gotta show up and have fun. If you're not having fun, you ain't gonna do it. Fun, friends, the desire to know and be known. That's right. I got that directly from you. We all have this desire to know and be known. And then fundamentals. So if you have fun and you make some friends, you know, you're going to eventually learn the fundamentals of, in our case, wrestling, grappling. Okay, fundamentals is really becoming competent. As you become more competent, as you learn the fundamentals, you're going to start to have some success. That success is going to create confidence, right? As you become confident, you're gonna stick around, and you're gonna develop a passion for the sport that we love so much. Okay, and if you develop that passion, you will stick around, and you'll develop this craftsman mindset and all these other things that are going to come with that, right? But if you're passionate about it, you'll stick around forever, and you will experience all the benefits that that you as mom and dad want your son to have, that as coach we want you to have. Like all the benefits that the sport has to offer, you will learn those if you become passionate. But if we break the chain, the chain anywhere in there, then it goes wrong, and so there's, like I said, there's subcategories in that as you passion. What awesome book by Cal Newport, so good they can't ignore you. Amazing book. He talks about a craftsman mindset versus a passion mindset, right? And so you didn't ask this question, but I'm kind of jumping into it.
Yeah.
That like so as kids we all got told, find a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life, okay? And the punchline is that there's another book that's very similar to this too, but he says find a job you love so much that you never have to work a day in your life, right? That's the whole idea. Basically, that's not true. And in the book, Cal Newport disproves that. And he talks about a craftsman mindset. And what they have found is that you don't find a thing that you love and do it forever. What you actually desire, what your heart and soul truly desire, is to find a job and experience the process of getting better at it. Okay, so he calls it a craftsman mindset, where you take your craft and you improve on it. And what we really desire are that feeling of improvement. If we feel progress happening, then you'll do whatever.
Well, there's hope.
There's
hope. Yeah, it builds hope.
Yeah. I mean, look, I worked at the coal mine. Dude, I had the most fun. I was telling a kid that I worked at the coal mine the other day, and he was like, "You did what? Like I was like, bro, it was the most fun ever, because every day I was doing something different. I was learning to weld. I was learning to drop heavy equipment. I was learning to do all the stuff. And I was just like, dude, this is so cool. And as I got, the first time around sucked because I was doing everything for the first time, right? But as you make your second and third, fourth lap around the sun, and someone says whatever and uses a term that you didn't used to know, then the new guy's like, "Oh, what?" You're like, "Man, follow me." And, you go get whatever out of the tool truck and do the job and whatever else. And he's just like, "Whoa," it's fun because you feel yourself getting better at it. Right. And so that's what we've got to truly have. And so circling all the way back, as you become competent, grappling provides that short feedback loop. If I'm playing a team sport, which, look, you have to, the whole benefit of the team thing is that we learn to work together.
That's right.
Right? Listen, there's nothing like you and me decide to start grappling together. We're going to elbow each other, bump each other. There's going to be disagreement, and we have to learn to work together at a very real rate. Not like we line up in formation correctly. Like, no, there's real problem solving, personable. You know what I'm saying? And so, with it being an individual sport, that the feedback loop is short there. If I play football and I work on all my throwing mechanics and the plays and all the things, whatever else, and I'm playing quarterback, Johnny over here misses the thing and we get sacked for a loss. All of a sudden it's 2nd and 25. Like, I didn't really see a correlation between me working harder and our team winning. By the way, we were like, and I think we went like 2 seasons without winning a game when I was in middle school, and so it was pretty discouraging, of like, I think I'm getting better. I can throw more accurately. I can throw farther. I understand how to read defenses, but somehow we keep losing. And it just was like, you know what? I don't want to play because I don't have the opportunity to be successful here.
Sure.
Yeah. So, fun friends fundamentals, man. Gotta have it.
It's awesome.
Build the confidence over time, right? So.
Yeah. So I've got a lot. Obviously, we could do this all day.
Yeah.
Which we can't. But so, and I've left a bunch of really interesting topics off the table. But
we'll do it again. We'll do another episode.
Yeah, for sure. And so, how can people find you and what you're doing at Ironclad, and where can they jump into the stuff that you guys are doing? So
we are at Ironclad Wrestling on all social media stuff. IRONCLAD, Ironclad Wrestling on all things. You can find us at ironcladwrestling.com. Our online training platform stuff and what we're doing with training coaches and everything else is through ironcladmethods.com. But we're teaching and preaching this stuff every day at Ironclad Wrestling, right? So we have a gym in Birmingham. We have campuses. We're popping up our youth stuff all over. Then we're going to have 5 or 6 campuses. Right now, working on some approval through a couple of Parks and Rec boards, but we're going to be in Pelham, Trussville, Mortimer, Jordan, Pell City, Birmingham. We might be looking at like Homewood and a couple other places that we're taking over. So yeah, we're we're doing this all over the place, man. Wherever the heck you are, we either are there or can be there remotely and help parents. I mean, I'm answering emails from a guy, not emails. I don't work through email. Sorry. DMs. Okay. If you email me, you'll hear from me in 6 months,
Right,
maybe.
yeah.
Okay. But if you, I was talking to a guy who lives in Alaska. He's from Iowa. He's got a 9-year-old, and he's like, my kid's not tough, and I want him to learn to wrestle, but like, struggling with some parts of this, and I think there's probably a better way than the way we did it, and we came up with a rough way, and I was like, yeah, dude, grab that thing online and freaking to follow it. Play with your son. Let us be the instructor, and y'all just be playing together, working on it, and it'll have fun. You know what I mean? Like, no different than throwing a baseball in your in your front yard, backyard. Like, we're just working on it together, but just keep them exposed, the next exposure of it, right? So, yeah, man, we find us Ironclad Wrestling, all the things, and we're trying to help, dude, spread the mission.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a lot to do, and this is to me, this is the most exciting thing that I'm doing. You know, is exploring these topics, and I really think that we're just now scratching the surface of the future. And you know, again, you know, we're trying to, you know, I think the idea of this podcast is to how we can excel using the gifts that we have. And how to not live in mediocrity, but in excellence, and just exploring the ways to do that. And so I really appreciate you and appreciate your friendship, and look forward to doing this again soon.
This is fantastic. I'll close saying kind of the same thing, that like, dude, this is obviously where you're gifted, and you have amazing wisdom through being a husband, father, leader in your church, businessman. Like, this is what you're supposed to be doing too. And so, like, I will do this. I have a lot going on, just like you do. But dude, I'll sit down with you and do this once a week, anytime, because it lights my hair on fire too.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate the confidence.
Yeah, dude,
sure.
you're the man. Thank you so much for everything, bro.
All right, bro.